So we'll be doing OSCQR 316. So we've moved into a new category of OSCQR standards. This one is called design and layout. And OSCQR 316 is about a logical and consistent, uncluttered layout. It's about establishing a consistent layout for course menu and course design across an institution so that students have reduced cognitive overload as they mutter through your course, right? We already have, from the first two standards, we have a course overview, we have the course tour video, you're explaining where everything is. Now what we're doing is we're looking at course design from a high level. We're looking from an institutional level. What is consistent course design? So right here, we have a little video, not too bad. It's pretty short today.
It provides the students with a roadmap of their learning. And if it's consistent and clear to them, it's going to be easy to navigate. They're going to do better in the class. They're not going to be as stressed because they don't know what to do. So we want to make sure that the classes are all clear and consistent across the school. I follow the OSCQR rubric on making sure that we've got the welcome, we've got the getting started threads. What do you do? Where do you start? Where do you go next? We provide information if there's other tools that they need. We make sure that we provide them with links on how to use those tools so they don't have to find their own way through it. We just make sure that everything's got due dates. They know exactly what they have to do and when it has to be done. It's very simple for it to be done. It's just going to require some, retraining basically of how to make that a very clear class, because online classes have come a very long way from the beginning, and there's more involved, and they just might not know how to make that happen. The instructional designer is the one that can help them, both online classes and in regular, classroom classes. The instructional designer can help with all that. I can guide them along the way based on what they want to show in their classes. Not every class is going to be exactly the same, but as long as they're semi-consistent, students are more comfortable. So if the faculty instructor doesn't know how to do something, they just need to come ask me.
So a nice little short video from SUNY about 316. So we're going to break it down, what the actual SUNY information says about this particular standard in the design. So first of all, this online course needs to be easily navigated and progress through a logical sequence and pace. The consistency in the layout needs to be of regular order within modules or folders, and it is consistent across the institution. I found this article too, and I think I put it in the resources at the bottom, where they did a study. Well, there's been a lot of studies actually, but they've done a couple of studies here now about when the course design layout and has poor navigation and how it impacts the learner overall. So it's a pretty interesting article that I have added to the PowerPoint, so you'll be able to read a little bit about that as well. In part 2, it goes on to speak about the same things. More consistency on the online overall scheme, the page design, the structure, the assignments and rubrics, they're all the same, right? So a lot of this is taken care of for us by Blackboard. We all have the same color scheme. We all have the relative same page design and relatively the same navigation. The same type of buttons to navigate. We all have the same assignment look and our rubrics look and our tests look, all those things that our discussions, our blogs, all of these tools are very consistent across Blackboard. So this is a lot of help. We're also going to talk about redundancy and how many times do you put links in? Do you course link? What's a good idea about putting things on the menu and in the week? So we'll talk a little bit about redundancy and also about sequencing. How do you sequence the content, the learning activities, and the interactions within each week so that the students have this idea, this impression of consistency? The last part of this is a little different. We haven't talked about this at all before, which is about titles and headings, and that these titles and headings should be very detailed and specific about what the learner is going to do and what the file type is capable of. So we'll talk about your naming conventions, normal naming conventions for course work in Blackboard in our course shells. So what are these practices we're actually talking about? Well, we're actually talking about a universal course menu that is comes from a lot of Blackboard exemplary courses.
Join the meeting.
It comes from a lot of evidence-based practices. And so we have a suggested universal course menu that most instructional designers across the country recommend. We have a lot of consistent evidence about its effectiveness. We're also talking about a consistent layout from course to course and within your course so that every week is really looks the same. We're talking about the consistent sequence and pace so that students are moving from week 1 to week 15 and they're not jumping back and forth between an assignments folder, a testing folder, a publisher folder, right? Where the students are in the week and they stay in the week. And we'll talk about that. And then we'll talk about redundancy. When is it appropriate to start putting redundancy in the course that is meaningful to students? And then how do we develop these meaningful headings and titles so that our files have meaning for students and they're easy to navigate? So let's talk about this universal course template. So here is our suggested universal course template, and most people will already have seen most of this from EPTO. This is not totally out of the blue. But we have adjusted, Kyle and I and Mary Adele have talked and we've adjusted it a little bit to you know, what we're really comfortable with promoting. And so we have 3 content areas at the top and my grades. So the idea is at the top of the menu is your content, the content for the students. This is where they're going to go to do their content. And the first 2 weeks of the course, you would make Get Started the landing page. So all the students, whether they're adding or dropping or whatever they're doing, everybody in the course has that access to the Get Started for the first 2 weeks. And you're going to, in there, we've already talked about what goes into Get Started. It goes the welcome video, the course tour, the course overview, and a little bit about yourself, plus a checklist. And that is both standards 1.1 and 1.2. You don't have to call this Get Started. You could call it Getting Started. You could also call it Start Here, but it should be something that says start, right? This is where you're going to start for your student. The next thing is course information. Now, it's also just as fine to call this syllabus or course information, either name, as long as you have it in the same position here in your menu. And this is where you're going to have your syllabus, your schedule, your textbook information, your technical requirements, your contact policies, maybe an instructor video. Maybe you'll have an additional video about how to get the kits, how to get the publisher. You'll have all your IA information. And then in spring, we're going to talk more about what a deconstructed syllabus is for online, and all a deconstructed syllabus actually goes into the course information area, but we're not going to talk too much about that tonight because that is not one of the first 13 standards. So you want to have this sort of syllabus course information. And so far, most of the people that I've courses reviewed have this sort of course information syllabus area. The next thing is weekly coursework. So this could be weekly sessions, weekly coursework, weekly homework, weekly practice, whatever you call it, as long as you have weekly in there. So the student understands that the unit of the course is actually a week, right? In this folder, in this weekly coursework, you're going to have at least 13 weeks of folders, right? So you may have 8 or 6 in summer. You'll have 15 weeks for full semester. You might have 11 folders for late start. You may have 12 days for winter. And so everything in the folder is for that week. So in week 1, everything for week 1 goes into the week 1 folder. We don't see anywhere here. We don't see any other content areas for assignments separately, or publisher links separately, or tests separately. Everything for the week goes into the week. So that means when a student comes in to the course, and once you're past the first 2 weeks, you can make the weekly coursework your landing page. So it comes right into the landing page, and it comes right into that week. So they don't have to click anywhere. They just click on the weekly folder and they get started. There's no moving around, no searching for anything, no looking for tasks of the week. It's all in that folder. Below is My Grades, so they can check their grades. I've seen it named different conventions. I do recommend let's keep it My Grades. It's not the end of the world if you say review your grades or My Grades. As long as we're in that kind of reference, I think it's totally fine to call it something, but we don't want to call it something too far out of that nomenclature.
Excuse me, this is Susan. I have a quick question for you. So
Sure.
under I used to call mine weekly lessons, and in fact, I still do during the academic year, but in the summer, because we meet more than weekly, I change it to lessons because I don't want them to think that, because there's 2 sets of lessons for every week in the summertime. So I don't know, do you have any suggestions for that, for the courses that meet more than weekly or have more than, weekly work?
Absolutely. I think that's a fantastic question. When you're working in summer courses, I would be comfortable for just your summer course, having it say lesson units.
Okay.
That is, totally fine, but I would rather see you keep a weekly base of that course, so that your folder would contain all the work for both lessons. That week 1 folder would have both lessons for the course. That would be preferable, but I don't think it's that far out of navigation standards to change this to lesson, lesson unit, or our weekly modules, or digital lessons, something in this sort of frame. We just don't want to go too far outside of that nomenclature. We really want weekly coursework, or weekly modules, or weekly lessons, or weekly sessions, right? That really is what we want to see. I know it's difficult with the summer stuff. When you do a winter course, it's actually daily coursework, daily week, day 1, day 2. I have a template for that. Anybody teaching for winter to help you build that out. I could show you an example. But I know summer is really tough because it's so compressed.
I think it makes it easier for course copy when you keep the same format. I just really change the name of the tab. Because otherwise you have to group them, in folders differently for the summer. That's the reason I did it that way.
Yeah, my best suggestion would be to have 2 shells. Your spring and fall, you keep 1 shell, and then when you come up to summer, you're doing a copy from summer to summer.
Yeah,
that's what I do. I have 2 different shells, one for summer and one for the regular semesters. And what I do with mine is it still says, I explain in my getting started part that there are 2 lessons every week.
Right.
And
Right.
so go to weekly coursework, and those lesson 1 and all the coursework's under lesson 1, lesson 2, all the coursework's there. So
Yeah.
that
The
seems to be
drawback
working well.
But the drawback to that is if you've got to really track the changes you make, because if you make changes in your tests, if you make changes in any of the verbiage that you put within those lessons, you got to make sure you do it in the summer. So that's why I stopped doing that, because
Yes.
I always know that the course I'm in is the most up-to-date one, and that's why I've done it that way. I feel like you don't lose any of those really good changes. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to go back in and keep, I leave a little list. I leave myself a list and go, okay, you have to go back now for summer. So yeah.
The real key here, Susan, is that when you are in fall and spring, that the students understand that this is a weekly unit, not a lesson by lesson unit, right? So that's the most important. And then summer, I think we're there's a lot more flexibility in summer, as long as you're, something close to, naming, weekly lessons, or modules is another one. Online modules, something like that. So I think
if you spell it out on the syllabus too, I think that helps.
Yes, you can always reiterate that in your overview video for the course as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. It's an excellent question. This group here is all about communication tools, and for a long time, announcements has been put up into the top of the menu, and that really was done for a technical issue problem, not a best practice problem. And that is, if anybody has gone through the terror of having starfish as the only thing on your menu. I don't know if anybody is familiar. Hopefully you will never, ever run into this. But if you delete everything from your course except for the starfish link, you actually destroy the course, and we has to be deleted and rebuilt from scratch. Announcements was put there to make sure that problem does not occur very often, right? So nobody's running into that problem consistently. Announcements we're putting down here because we want to make sure and re-emphasize that you are not running your online course from the announcements. The announcement tool is just to alert students to where content will be in the course, right? So and every week you'll say, go to the week 5 folder, you'll find everything there, right? We're not teaching from the announcements tool, right? We're de-emphasizing announcements. Totally different during COVID. Everybody was using the announcement tool to teach, and it was totally fine. But we want to ensure that we walk away from that practice, right? And it goes back to federal regulations for the Department of Education, which considers when you're running your course through email or just announcements, that is significantly close to correspondence teaching and not online teaching. So there's a lot of regulations, as you know. Most of you have been through EPDO, so you've read all that information about the regular substantive interactions. It's only gotten more strict. This year, those regular substantive was again redefined by the Department of Education, and it's even stricter. So we want to make sure that we stay well away from the idea of running our course through email for online or running the course through announcements. You are going to have other tools too, right? So you're going to have maybe somebody has blogs, maybe somebody is using some other tools, links to other tools, and that's totally fine. You might have email in here, you might have messages, and this is where all those tools in Blackboard should go. So you can just add them right in here and hide what you don't want, or delete it if you don't want it, and then keep what you want there. And then finally, every course in the bottom should have the support, right? This is where our student services are going. Every course should have Starfish and Tutor Me. Some won't have the library. Like some, not every course is concentrating on writing or sending people to the library, but a lot of courses are. So it comes standard, but you can remove that for, say, if you're doing a bio lab, you may not need the library in the course connection. Always good to have, though. You can also put in other links. You could put in a link to advising and registration and financial aid. You can put links into Shauna over at the Community of Social Resources office. So think about those services you could put, but this is sort of your minimum that we want to look. This is going to be our consistent look across the institution, and it looks like a lot of other institutions, right? So it's very similar, especially if they're also in Blackboard. Is there any questions about this? I know this is this is not mandated. Again, remember, this is to meet the OSCQR standards.
Hi, Mish, it's Leslie Dolan. I did have a couple of questions. Hi.
Sure.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so the first question actually has to do with the announcements, and this is how I've been using it today. Like, I just send weekly reminders, like I've opened up week 8, whatever week it is, or don't forget your rough drafts are due this week. That kind of information is okay to share, right, through the announcements and email?
That's exactly what it's for, right?
Okay.
Sending 2 or 3 announcements a week saying, hey, remember, today's the day to make sure your discussion post is in. Hey, today's the day to make sure that quiz is in, right? So you're always sort of keeping them. It's actually, the technique is called nudging. It is a really effective as long as you don't nudge too much, right? So there's that balance of annoying people and keeping it good and useful. And at a minimum as possible. So, 2 to 3 weeks, sending them a nudge, I'm saying, hey, I have noticed, not a lot of people have done this discussion. Remember, it's due in a couple hours, right? That's fantastic. That's the nudge. You continue to nudge on and on. What we don't want to see is your task list for the week in announcements. Right. So that's where you're starting, or your videos and announcements. Other than the welcome video is totally fine to send, especially that first week. We really want to see that in the weekly materials, the weekly coursework. And when you send an announcement, you have that option to actually tag the folder you want so they can link right to it through the announcement.
Okay. The other question had to do with the third section here, you're calling the support section. So, I had a question about how we use Starfish here. Like, I know I can send like little red flags and like little notes to some students if there's a concern. Do we also use Starfish, or do our students use it to like schedule appointments with advising and counseling like they do at URI?
Yes, they do. So that students use it for everything. Everything they do, from bookstore to financial aid to making an appointment with you to getting kudos to looking at their schedule and advising. Everything goes through Starfish.
All right. And I know, for example, we talked about, like, I teach mostly, composition and English courses. So I've talked about, I have the link to the Writing Center on my syllabus and the Getting Started, but that would also be something that would be appropriate to have a link in this section as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The Writing Center, you could even have a Student Success Center to tutoring service link to the webpage. All that can go right down here, right? So what we don't want to see is them up here and in here. So we know clearly students understand that these services belong at the bottom, and when they need something, they can go down there and look.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Any other questions? Okay, that's great. Excellent. So it takes a little bit to get your template in order, move stuff around. But once it's in this sort of configuration, and the more and more faculty that sort of go for the OSCQR quality, course quality, the less and less you'll hear from students about not being able to find anything, right? They onboard, everybody onboards quickly, right? Because they know, other than just, first semester. All right, so now let's talk about in each week or in each content area, right? We want to keep that weekly units, and we want to make sure that we're keeping a Monday midnight to Sunday midnight schedule for all our online courses. Once in a while, I'll run into somebody running something else. So we want to make sure, during remote teaching, that was totally fine, but we want to make sure that all the 600 level courses and 700 courses all are run weekly units, Monday through Sunday. So that's not too bad to do. And most people, 99% of people have that already done. Content and assessments are the same in the same layout again. So everything for the week is in the week. And I know we have a lot of publishers, so hopefully most publishers, you're able to link directly to the week, directly to the homework link for the week. So that's what you want to put in though, those direct links to the publisher, instead of just putting a general link on the menu itself, right? So you want to really be specific as possible when you're doing your layout. You also want to make sure it's sequenced. So every week you're doing the same sequence in your week. So you're doing your overview video, which we talked about in 1-2. Then you're doing your task list, which is also 1-2. And then the content is put in an order that's consistent per week. So maybe you have them read the chapter first, then do the chapter homework, then do a discussion for the week, then do a quiz, right? Whatever you have, you want to have that exact same layout with some changes. You know, you're going to have, you know, little things here that are one-offs that are going to happen. That's totally fine. But the majority of that week is pretty much the same, in the same order, right? You may have different assignments or a project or a presentation, but they're all sort of in that same area within that week. And then again, the content is chunked, right? So we're not seeing large pages of text like we're in Word. We're seeing everything is chunked down. We're seeing the videos, lecture videos chunked down to 10 to 15 minutes. You can have multiple videos. I've seen a couple of courses that did a great job listing multiple videos, one after the other for video. And you know, you always have this ability to sort of have them do some homework, do video 1, have them do a quiz, do video 2, have them do the discussion, do video 3, right? You don't have to have them do video 1 through 6 and then go on. You can use active learning, which is giving them pause, right? They're doing something, absorb something, and then you're giving activity, and then you're doing and absorbing, and then they're getting activity, right? So you can chunk the content in a way that is down in digestible pieces, and that it is consistently sequenced and can be managed very easily by the students. And think about the phone too, right? That how is the video, a 1-hour video, going to play on a phone on Wi-Fi in the bus, right? It's not. So if we chunk that down to 15 minutes, that's a lot less load on the phone, on the bus, and it's much more manageable. And I know for nursing, nurses love those audio too. So chunk down your audio so they can listen to it on rounds or when they're doing clinicals, so they can go through their glossaries and things like that. Is there any question about layout, sequence, or pace? Yes, Marilyn.
Yes, you mentioned, I'm going to lower my hand now. You mentioned the Monday through Sunday for 700 as well, which are hybrids.
Yes.
So here's my question. Let's say I have a class that meets on Fridays. It wouldn't be good for me to be giving them work Monday through Sunday. I want to give them work Friday through Thursday night. And then they come in on Friday for that class. And so
they're only coming in Friday.
Right. Let's say I have a once a week class Friday, and it's a hybrid.
Okay.
So they're only coming in on the Friday. They're doing the other part of the work online.
Correct. So we really want them Monday through Sunday. And so think of it this way. From Monday to Friday, they're doing all their pre-work for the course. You may have them reading something. They're doing maybe some publisher work. They're practicing. They might take a quiz. That's all happening pre. Then on Friday is the actual course, right? They're doing the course. And then they have Sunday and Saturday and Sunday to sort of work out whatever the end product is, right? So you're just breaking it up to Monday through Sunday to be consistent with everybody in the college, right? So that students understand, even though your course is on Friday, if you have a lot of work for them to do after the course, assign it the next week, right? Give them some to do Friday through Sunday, and then assign them most of it the next week as pre-work, right? And then you can go over it the next Friday.
Okay,
Oops.
thank you.
Yep, absolutely. That was, I think it was Christine.
Yeah, I just had a couple questions also about the Monday through Sunday. So what do you recommend when the semester doesn't start so that you can start on a Monday?
The first week of the start, when it starts, sometimes it's Tuesday or Wednesday when we start. So you want to make sure that that first week is light, and that you move the bulk of the work to the second week. So you don't want to overload them on a half week. So if you have a Wednesday to Sunday that first week, you're going to have them go through the get started. You're going to have them do their icebreaker discussion. You might have them watch some videos. You might have them read the first chapter and do a quiz, right? But then the rest of that work should start the next week.
Okay, I just feel like with some of the compressed schedules, especially like right now, I have a late start anatomy and physiology too. There's just so much information in there. And so the semester started on a Wednesday. And so my weeks are actually running Wednesday through Tuesday. So, the new content, the weekly content goes up every Wednesday at 12:01 a.m.
Right. And so that first week, right, that we launched, you do a Wednesday through Sunday. So it's a little light. And then Monday you start with the regular content of that course. So Monday, that first and second week are going to be a little skewed, but then the rest of the weeks for the rest of the semester should be good for you.
Okay. And then my other question had to do with hybrids, sort of similar to what Marilyn asked. So I have some hybrids that the lecture is online and then the biology lab is in person. And so, for example, one of them, the lab is on Tuesdays. And so they have lecture material that all of their lecture assignments are always due by the end of Sunday. But then through Blackboard, I have like pre-lab assignments for them to do. And those are due by the start of their lab. So they're due Tuesdays at 10 a.m.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect. That's exactly what. So for hybrid courses, or any, if you flip your classroom, you have a blended course, you are doing high flex, any kind of hybrid flexible course, there is pre-work, there is the meeting, and there is post-work. And so you want to handle that Monday through Sunday, whatever the meeting time is, whether it's Tuesday or Friday or Thursday. So that you're always going to have those three parts. So when each week on Monday through Sunday, you're going to have that pre-meeting work, meeting work, and post-meeting work. And I even have, if you go up to, let me get you the link for, where is it? I have a schedule, online teaching preparedness. I think it's on there. Yes. So on this online teaching preparedness, I'll put it in the chat. If I could find chat. There we go. Here it is. Here's that
We
link.
can't see that. We're still seeing your PowerPoint.
Yep, that's totally fine. I just put
Okay.
a link in the chat. So the link to that page is on the chat. It's called Online Teaching Readiness. And if you scroll halfway down the page, there is a weekly hybrid course schedule template that is designed to have a pre, during, and post work, so that when you build your schedule, students understand there's 3 columns, right? You have the pre-work, the meeting, and the post-work. It works much better. That's one of the hard things about hybrid. Students get lost sometimes of what's due when and where, like what's before and what's after. So by using this hybrid schedule, that will really help you manage the definitions of what has to get done first, what has to get done after, and that will help them understand the sequence. But that first and second week on any kind of half week beginning is always a little rough. but you go light on week one, and then, you go heavier in week 2, and then if you can, shift a little to week 3. So however you're doing that. What we don't want to do is be so tied to that textbook that everything in chapter 1 has to be done in week 1. Everything in chapter 2 right? Because they put a lot of extra work in there, right? That's not aligned to our outcomes, right? So make sure that you don't have any extra work each week that's not directly tied to the outcomes. Christine?
So I have a similar issue, or I guess question, not so much an issue. Some of our content in biology really can't be, for lack of a better word, crammed into that Monday through Sunday. And it would flow over into, let's say, a Tuesday or a Thursday. And so it makes it difficult to then start a new topic or unit that wouldn't cohesively go into a Sunday deadline, including an assessment. So I know that some of my students would now be confused about what content would be due on Sunday, especially if there were an assessment. So how would you navigate that sort of situation?
So if you have, resend that chat, I had to sign on to my, okay, yep. So for when you have content that spans multiple weeks, right? So that's basically what you're talking about, Christine, right? Is do I have that right?
Right, yeah, exactly. And it's partial weeks. That's so it sort of goes to the other Christine's question, except that she was talking about the beginning partial week, which makes sense to what you were saying, is that intro stuff can, it's easy to navigate at the beginning. But when you're talking about mid-semester or at some point where you're talking about partial weeks, 10 days, 18 days, content, something like, especially the bulky lectures like A&P.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we have a week coming up right in November where there's 2 days off. We're gonna have, so there's only 5 days that week, right? That they have work, but they have the same amount of work that they've got to do.
Well, I'm
right?
not even talking about days off necessarily. I mean, like literally where we have 3 consecutive weeks, 5 days a week, but the lecture material would actually cover, a Monday through the following Thursday, right? So 5 plus 4 days, so 9 days worth of content.
Yeah.
So you can't do a Monday through Sunday, because then you do Monday through Sunday plus Monday through Thursday.
Yeah, so I want to make sure that I don't miscommunicate. The Monday through Sunday cycle is to help students manage the work for the week. You can absolutely let content overflow to the next week, right? You're just working on a Monday to Sunday. The thing to avoid, right, is making something due on Thursday, right? Make it due on the next Sunday, right? Don't try to map the due dates to the end of you speaking about that chapter, right? Keep it consistent. So if the content goes till next Thursday, then have everything due on that Sunday.
Doesn't this mean that every student in the college is going to be overwhelmed by having every due date on Sunday?
Well, that's for online courses. Yes, that's where it should be, right? That's why we want to space it out, right? When you think about sequence and pace here, you're really talking about how much is happening Monday through Sunday. Is it 9 or 12 hours of work, right? Are you giving them enough work, right? Because you can only give them 9 and 12. You can't give them more than that unless there's, you're a 6-credit course. So you need to make sure that content is within the credit hour limits, right? If it goes over that, that's totally okay. Then it goes to the next week, but you can't double up on those hours. You can still only have 12 credit hours worth of content in there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess so. What I was getting at that last point was, if I have a student taking 4 other classes and all of our due dates are on Sunday, that student is going to be overwhelmed on Sunday. but that's a different
Correct.
question.
If they wait to the end of the week, yes, absolutely, right? So this is about them managing their time, and this is only for online classes, right? So due dates for, you know, in-person classes, you could do whatever you want. You know, you can have it do the next day in the sequence, right? So you could have, so if I set my pace and sequence up, I say to students, to manage the work of the week, I want you to submit your first post to the discussion board on Wednesday. Your replies are due Friday. I want you to do the quiz by Saturday, and then the assignments are due Sunday, right? So you're giving them a sequence and pace each week so that you're not saying everything is due on Sunday, right? You're pacing the week out for them so they know what they have to do each day of the week. When content rolls over, you just don't want to pop up with dates all of a sudden for, oh, your lab report is due Thursday, and the next week, oh, it's Wednesday, and the next week it's Friday, right? You want to keep it consistent every week, but content can definitely roll week to week to week.
Thanks.
I thought, Heidi, I saw your hand go up.
Yeah, you actually just answered my question. So I guess I just wanted to confirm the way I do it is, you know, every Sunday evening, open up the week to the students. And I always have every week broken down into 2 parts. So like week 8, part 1, week 8, part 2, and everything is due either Wednesday midnight or Sunday midnight, and it's never changes. So for example, part 1 will include the reading material as the foundation for the discussion post, whatever we're working on. And so there are assignments in both parts, but it's not like there are due dates. I have submission tabs for, you know, part 1. So they do have some assignments that are due Wednesday midnight and then Sunday. So it's not like everything has to just go into Sunday's due date.
Right.
Because like to your point, the discussion posts, I need responses. So they need to have an initial post at some point with a
Right.
cutoff date. Otherwise everybody's going to be chatting at 11:55 on a Sunday night. So that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And then when you have a short week, like a Wednesday through Sunday, right, we still have to do 12 hours of work for the student, even though it's a shorter week, right? They still need to have, you know, if it's a 4-credit course, or 9 hours, if it's a 3-credit course, you still have to, even though it's a short week, the students are still doing, you know, 9 hours that week of work, right? So it's still the same amount of work every single week, even though it's a truncated week. It's just that the students have to sort of hustle that first week, so you can try to make it a little light on them. Any other questions? So the next thing we're going to talk about is redundancy. And I'm going to resend that link real quick. Here we go. Just somebody needed that link. There you go. And for redundancies. Oh, did somebody have a question? Okay. For redundancy. So now is the question about how many times do you put things in the course? How many links do you really need? And there's some interesting answers about that from the instructional design research. So from practical experience over the years, instructional designers and faculty have researched this first question: where should you put the discussion links? So what the research has found out, and what's recommended, is that you have a discussion link on the menu, which we talked about, but also you have a link to the discussion in each weekly folder, right? So you're again getting that specificity in the week, linking directly to discussion 1 in week 1. The other thing is the same thing for publisher. It's okay to add a content area for the overall publisher link that on the menu in the content area, right? So you could put it right under weekly coursework. But make sure that when you put your publisher links in the week, get as specific as possible that the publisher allows, right? Because sometimes they don't allow you to link, but most of them do. Most of them allow you to link directly to chapter 1 for week 1, and the same thing for the homework and quizzes. The next thing is to remember to use course links sparingly. One of the main reasons I think and what I've seen and what the practices have been, using course links works really well when you have a semester long project. It's okay to put that semester long project in the menu under weekly coursework, and then use course links each in the appropriate week to link them back to that main content area. So that's okay to do, but you want to refrain from using it too much, right? You want to be really careful about how many course links you put into your course. You also want to repeat the due dates. Due dates should repeat several times in each week, right? Once in the list, and then once in the item or in the link for the item, or the test or the assignment, right? Assignment instructions, it should be in there, should be in the assignment description, right? And then also in your syllabus, you might list it in your schedule, right? So we're repeating those due dates. The same things with repeat instructions for assessments, right? You put the instructions for a discussion in the discussion link in the week, then you put it on the discussion board itself so that it's in both places. And then if you're on a test, you have this description of the instructions on the test link in the test description and in the test instructions, right? So you're over and over, you're repeating those instructions in multiple places. And then again, the same thing, the checklist should be in the same order as your week, which we talked about first. And then you should also repeat those due dates up there in the checklist as well. So you're getting this continued redundancy over and over again. And then when we talk about the consistency of the week, we're having this redundancy that, discussions are all due Wednesday, quizzes are all due Saturday, assignments are all due Sunday. So that redundancy quickly onboards the student and they know exactly what they need to do. So this also leads to less emails for you. It leads to less student confusion, and it will impact those DFW rates for any of your classes. Any questions about redundancy?
Yeah, I have one, Mish. This is Leslie.
Hi, Leslie.
I used to do that a lot, and it seems like there's a parallel to it, right? Because if you put it in 5 different places and then you have to change it for some reason, you have to remember to change it in all 5 different places, because I swear as soon as you miss one, somebody's going to jump on it and it's going to just create this whole big deal. And it's really nice to think that, we're not ever going to make mistakes, but we make mistakes sometimes. And so I just find repeating some things dangerous. It creates more problems than it's worth.
Absolutely. I totally agree. So the way I handle it, and the way I've seen other people handle it, is that the week, you put not the date, but you put the day. So it says due Monday, due Sunday, due Tuesday, so that you don't have to go continually in there every semester and change that, right? So they're always working in the most current week, so they know that the Tuesday coming up, that's due. You need to put those dates in the schedule, right? That in the syllabus, right? That's where those days go. But you can just simply, and I think I have an example coming up of the repeat due date, how I handle that. So in the checklist, I have initial post due Wednesday, responses due Sunday, right? But I'm not putting dates in there. So you're really okay with that. In the test, I say, quiz is due Friday, and I don't have to continually redo that all the time, right? So definitely manage those dates. You want to keep the dates out of it as much as possible. Any other questions? Excellent. So here we're talking about the redundancy for the example test instructions. So here again, we're putting in the instructions for the test in the description, the course link description, in the test description. And then I am also making sure that I'm showing the description to the students, and I'm also showing the instructions, right? And then I actually put in a little bit again about this, right? So they'll see this description and this test, and in the link, they'll see the same thing. Modeling good naming conventions. This is one of I see over and over again is you know, and I'm just as bad, right? Throwing in a file and then forgetting to put any context around it. So that students just see this title of the file and they're not really sure what to do, right? So this naming convention is about placing things in context within the week. And I have some examples for you. So when you do your meaningful titles and headings, we want to make sure that every title should be meaningful. So every time you name something, instead of naming it Slides Wave, we're naming it what it actually is, right? So we're naming it something interesting, something meaningful to the student. And then I'm giving them a description, and I call this coaching, right? We're coaching the language for the students so that they know what they're supposed to do. You might have a 1, 2, 3 steps if that's they have to manage a bunch of things with it. And then here's those file names, right? I don't have HTML code or anything with like 2020 fall, right? I'm keeping it right to the title of the actual document in here. And the reason we're doing this is for students who are blind, students who are low vision, and students who have contrast issues. So it's much easier for them to handle the titles than handling it with these sort of names. And then additionally, right, we're putting context to that. So for this one here, that is attached files. I just have I put in some files that I added to the content collection for them to read. I have an example for a file. So one of the things here is the file under the build contents, right? So you do build content file, avoid that like the plague, right? Don't use file. Reason being is file does not allow you to add a description or any context around that other than the title, right? So what we want to do is use item, right? Build your item and either attach the file, or you can list it as a link to the content collection. Here's another example where I'm using a picture. I'm giving a little context about it, and then I'm giving a link for the learners to check out, right? So I'm coaching what's going on. I'm making it a little interesting. And now that we have Ally, we can make all of these little decorative images disappear for students who are blind or using a screen reader. So it jumps right over it and goes right to the content. So it no longer bothers students, as was not the way it was in the past. So I'm really glad to see that we can add images, decorative images back in. Here's an example of a video. When you add your video, also you want to have a title with meaning, and then again you're coaching this language, and then you'll have added the video, right? So the students have a chance to understand why it's important to the course and why we why they really should watch it, right? This is another chance to convince them about why it's important. And context is really important for adult learners. Adult learners can spot busy work from 500 paces. So giving them some context around the work, not that you're giving them busy work, absolutely not. I know these courses are done really well, but giving them context really puts it in their mind, in their memory. And so some learning theories, we have a social constructivist learning theory, which talks about how the brain adds new information. So what you can do in these descriptions is you can link this new learning, this new video learning, to previous learning within the course. That actually connects the neurons, the older neurons, so the neurons that they put in there from last week, to these new neurons, making relationships. So actually referring back or talking about how this relates to the course actually helps them build really strong neural networks around this information, and retention is higher. Any questions about redundancy or about titles, using titles and headings, sorry. Okay. Here's an example for just text. If you had just had a little text. So I have my title, descriptive title. I have a little decorative, which I've made sure that will not interfere with a browser, screen reader. And then I have another subheading that helps organize the text. I'm using a short text paragraph. I'm using my bullets in 2 different ways to organize the information for students so that it's really very clear to them. So for the students, so they understand the hierarchy of the information, and they're also getting a lot of meaning and context from the text as I'm using it. Excellent. So here's those resources for this week. I put in a couple of different articles from some of the work, some of the instructional design work, and some of the e-learning work I found about this particular OSCQR standard. And there's always a link to OSCQR Standard 16. And as well, there's more examples of sequence and pace and examples in the community of effective practice. Take a look at each module. As I built those modules out in sequence, you can see that everything happens exactly the same as you work through, and that we have that sort of universal menu. And you can see, like, I've added other content areas underneath the weekly coursework for that. So you can take a look for that. And here's some more. There was quite a bit out there about this. It's been studied pretty well about organizing the course and how to do that best. And then we're going to have an event. Yay! So in addition to all these webinars, we got in touch with Rob. Rob is from SUNY Online. So Tim Stewart actually was able to give me his contact information. Rob has agreed to come and do a 1-hour webinar on the November 9th from 12 to 1, and we'll definitely record it in case you're teaching. And he's going to talk about how he helped develop OSCQR, its impact at SUNY, and about how OSCQR is used and where those effective practices are coming from. So this is going to be a great opportunity to hear more about the development of OSCQR and why OSCQR is so important. And that's why we've named this event, Why OSCQR? And of course, if you don't have a course review, you can always still sign up for one. There's time left for plenty of time in November.